Question number 6, the Honourable Willie Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Arts, Culture and Heritage, does the Minister think it's appropriate that Te Reo Māori be used in an invitation for Matariki, a distinct holiday to celebrate the Māori New Year? If not, why not?
Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Mr Speaker, yes, which is why the official invitation to Matariki contained Te Reo Māori, as I have here entitled Mānua Maia Te Mātahi Aotearoa. And he'd know this if he checked with his leader, Right Honourable Chris Hipkins, who received one of the invitations and declined to come.
Mr Speaker,
Just wait for the quiet.
sorry, Mr Speaker.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the Minister knows what I'm referring to as this letter to his counterpart yesterday, and I want to ask the question, what is the big problem with saying tēnā koe, which means hello, in his official invitation?
Well, Mr Speaker, I was writing to a minister from Australia, and I was encouraged to sign it off Naku Noa Nā, and I thought you sincerely would be more easily understood by the Australian.
Mr Speaker, is the Minister aware of a recent statement from the Honourable Tony Burke, his Australian counterpart, and the person the invitation was for, stating support for First Nations culture, stories and languages is crucial? And if so, why did he jump to the conclusion yesterday saying, I didn't think he needed a lot of reo in his invitation because he's an Australian?
No, I wasn't aware of that quote, and I must say I'm amazed that that member thinks that this is a matter that deserves an urgent debate in the House, and my writing to an Australian minister is a matter of such interest.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. He hasn't even come anywhere near.
Wait. Just let me call you then so the
Sorry,
whole House
Mr.
can hear you.
Speaker.
The Honourable Willie Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the Minister hasn't come anywhere near to addressing the question. I'm asking the Minister, is he aware of the Honourable Tony Burke's support for indigenous languages and the statements he's made around supporting first language culture and languages? He's made it very clear that that's crucial. He hasn't addressed the question at all.
Well, he did start his answer with, no, I wasn't aware of that statement, which kind of covers it. But before you took the point of order, I was going to suggest to the Minister that he didn't use decisions made by the Chair in answer to his question. The Honourable Willie Jackson.
Mr Speaker, point of order. Can I submit an article from the Honourable Minister, table an Honourable press release from the Minister, who, in its release, that talks about putting words into action to safeguard indigenous languages. Can I seek leave to
whose
table
press release is it?
Tony Burke, the Australian Minister.
It's pretty freely available, though, isn't it?
It's available, but it hasn't been very available in New Zealand media, but I'll seek leave to submit it.
What is the member now a distributor for an Australian newspaper, or is it genuinely something that most members in the House would not have access to?
It hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't really been available freely. But
is there any objection? No, member can table.
Mr Speaker,
point of order.
Point of order. Hang on, he's still on a point of order.
No, I think he's finished, didn't he?
No, I decide whether he is or not. He is.
I've got another question, Mr Speaker.
Oh, okay. In that case, point of order.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to table the official invitation to Matariki, which was sent to the Leader of the Opposition and not declined.
I presume that's not widely available either.
Was only sent to the people who were invited, Mr Speaker, and so I'm tabling it for the general public so they can see it in both languages.
Leave us sort. Any objection? Appears to be none.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Willie Jackson.
Mr Speaker, will the Minister now do the consistent thing and advise the King of England and King of New Zealand, His Majesty King Charles, to remove Te Reo Māori greetings from his Matariki message? If not, why not?
No, I wouldn't be making any such instructions to the King of New Zealand.